Hello dear students, I am Mallika and this video lecture is for MA 4th semester for the paper 402B Canadian Literature. Before embarking onto the literary history of Canada, we must first delve into the history and the landscape of Canada. Now, Canada is the land of diverse cultures. The nature here displays its manifold colors and beauty, ranging from the lush, moisture filled rainforests to the treeless tundra. The variety of landscapes and its weather has been an attraction for the writers from across the globe. Before the foreign invasions, Canada was inhabited by indigenous people. These indigenous people were in three categories. They were the Inuits, the Métis, and the First Nations. These were the original inhabitants of the land of Canada. Now, the history of Canada is full of conflicts and struggles. From the arrival of Vikings in the 11th century to the Canada as we know now for its salad bowl culture, it has come a long way. With the beginning of 15th century, both French and British began their expeditions. They explored, colonized, and fought for various lands, territories in this North American land. However, the British were first to lay claim over the Canadian land. When in 1497 the first British colony was established in Canada during the reign of King Henry VII. It was called the Nova Scotia or the New Scotland. After several years, the French began their expeditions, and during the reign of King Francis I of France, the first French colony was established in Canada, and it was called the Nouvelle France or the New France. Both these colonies flourished for certain period of time. But with the beginning of 17th century, both French and British wanted to expand their territory to gain power over a larger land. So, this led to a conflict and the 7 Years' War began. This war continued for years, and when it ended in 1763, a peace treaty was signed. This was known as the Treaty of Paris, and this treaty said that the French had to seize all their control from the Canadian land and retreat. As a result, the British became the sole ruler of the Canadian land. After several years, in 1867, the Dominion of Canada was formed, with the Confederation of Upper Canada, Lower Canada, and 2 other territories. Over 1,000 years of its history, Canada has had elements of indigenous people, of English, and of French. Now, this was a little about Canadian history. Moving towards the literature of Canada and how it began. So, the early literature, the early writers of Canada were necessarily the travelers, the visitors, the British officers, their wives, their families who came to visit Canada or to settle in Canada. These were the earlier writers, and they recorded their voyages, their journeys, and their experiences in the newfound land, in journals, in diaries, in letters. These are the first documentations of Canadian literature as we find it. One such earliest work is The History of Emily Montague by Frances Brooke. Now, she was the wife of a British officer. There were settlement narratives in the early period, and these narratives sometimes discouraged or sometimes encouraged the further settlers, the further visitors. For example, Susanna Moody's Roughing It in the Bush and Catherine Parr Traill, The Backwoods of Canada. Now, let us discuss a little about the themes in Canadian literature. Now, if we look at a glance, some common themes can be highlighted, some recurring themes can be highlighted in the literature of Canada. These could be the tropical life. Now, majorly the writers in Canadian literature, they have this obsession with the nature, with the landscape of Canada. They depict the harsh weather and all the things related to nature. This can be termed as the tropical life. The second could be the frontier life. Now, since Canada has been home to certain wars and struggles, so it has had a frontier life. Third theme could be, that can be highlighted, is a metaphorical wall that Canada has created against the other countries of the world. These three together can be termed as, combined as, the garrison's mentality. Now, this garrison's mentality, this term was coined by the Canadian critic Northrop Frye, and this was further explored by Margaret Atwood in her trailblazing work The Survival. It was in 1972. Now, this is all for this video. We'll meet again for the part 2 of this video, in which we'll discuss about the several phases of the development of Canadian literature. Stay tuned. Thank you.